I'd now like to take the pleasure of inviting up on stage all our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Karthik RK, Vice President Retail and Real-Time Payments at Mindgate Solutions Private Limited. A big round of applause, please. Thank you for joining us, sir. I'd like to invite up on stage Mr. Andrew Baartz, the Executive Director at Airscape. Let's have a round of applause and welcome him up on stage, please. Thank you for joining us, sir. I'd like to welcome up on stage Mr. Amit Kumar, Executive Director and Chief Technology Officer at Easebuzz. Let's have a round of applause and welcome him up on stage, please. Thank you for joining us, sir. And finally, Mr. Sudhir Sehgal, the Chief Business Officer at PayU Payments. Thank you for joining us, sir. Wow, a very interactive audience, I must say. So, well, this is looking like a very, very engaging session, which I will now hand over to Mr. Gautam, please.
Thank you so much for having us. Very excited, great energy at the festival. Thrilled to be here and to moderate this panel with a host of excellent co-panelists. I think the session is quite free-ranging and broad. I think what we're going to try to do, we all acknowledge that this is after lunch. So our number one mission is not to put you all to sleep. And therefore, we'll keep it quite relevant and punchy. I won't go into too much detail, but as you all know, from a payment standpoint, we are genuinely world-beating. We have the Jam Trinity, which is Jandan, Aadhaar, and mobile. We have our digital public goods that you would have all heard of, Aadhaar, UPI, etc. So I think, in short, what I'm trying to say is that all our digital highways are there. I think it's ours to lose. And I think the short point in terms of the people we have on this panel is that or the digital public goods or the highways can't do all the work. I think it also is just the foundation. And to build the building, you need the building blocks. And that's where I think the payment as a service players come in. And we have a few range of them, right? So we have PayU, payment aggregator. We have Easebuzz also in a similar space. We have Karthik from Mindgate, which is a switch provider and processes payments. And we have Andrew, who's from Airscape, which helps with the M of the Jam trilogy. So Jam is, as I said, Jandan, Aadhaar, mobile. I think in terms of having access to the internet and mobile phones that are able to process payments, that's a very important, for the poorest of the poor. Very often the types of devices, etc., that there are may not support the payment app. So I'll turn to Andrew first and just give him an opportunity to talk a little bit about his technology, which he's done in Africa and other regions, which in effect, and I'll let Andrew be more eloquent, but in effect makes very basic phones smarter. So with that, let me hand it over to Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here today. And I hope you're not too troubled by my accent. I'll try to be clear for you. Airscape is a technology we developed to enable the lower-end phones to be incorporated, to incorporate the people who are poorer in the world, to incorporate them into the financial system. And I'll just briefly explain the technology, because if you understand how it works, you can imagine all the applications. Where most app developers, when they develop an app, put the app on the phone, we don't. We put it on an app streaming server in the same way that that Spotify will put music on a server and stream to a music player, or YouTube will stream to a video player. We have an app player, and anyone who's a little technical will know, well, an app is much more complicated than that, but it's a good way of explaining it. So we've got an app player that is streamed, so the app's streamed, and that gives us two really big advantages. One, the first is it makes it an inclusion technology, so that the app player is 5 megabytes in size, and we could take a banking app that's 500 megabytes and put it on our platform and deliver that app on any phone that can handle a 5 megabyte app. And that opens a huge market. The reason we came here now, we were going to make this trip before COVID, but it's taken us a while to get here. It's hard from 10,000 kilometres away to work out how many phones actually would benefit from what we do. And we've been speaking to the carriers and the banks, and apparently there are a lot of feature phones that we won't work on, but there are a lot of smartphones or phones with operating systems that are more like smart feature phones. They don't have a lot of memory and a lot of processing power, and it's that body that we'll bring in. We thought we would be aiming more at the ultra-poor and bringing them into the financial system, but speaking to people for the last week, it's more, we think it's more about getting services to the lower middle class who fear slipping into poverty and making sure they've got the advantages. So that's what we do.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew. That was interesting. Just turning now to Sudhir, I think one of the mantras of RBI is every time, everywhere, every time. So I think we've achieved the fact that there are digital payment options accessible everywhere, and although that's a journey, we've got there somewhat. I think what the mantra is also is every time, which more than financial inclusion is also adoption of digital payments. So it's available, but will you adopt it? And that comes to price. And as you all know, UPI is free of MDR, and constantly payments, there is a downward trend that it's a utility, and therefore should be a cap on pricing more for enhancing adoption. So I think the question I wanted to ask you, Sudhir, is, and it's a tricky one, I appreciate that, is, while we are trying to enhance and obviously do every time payments and therefore enhance adoption in a very price conscious country, how do you balance that with getting innovation and best in class acceptance infrastructure in the remotest parts?
Thanks, Gautam. On the lighter side, our stall is next to RBI, so I need to be careful as to what I say about pricing. And the second part is, first of all, cheers to NPCI. We clocked 1 billion transaction as a country, right? That's huge. And when you look at it, it is you have to go back to maybe the time when NPCI was formed and when we were trying to go through the digital journey. See, at that point of time, I think the message was very clear that we want to be on the global map. At that point of time, inclusion was very important. All the aspects which have been laid down were very important. But now that we have clocked a very significant amount of volumes, right, it is also to know that a certain change has also happened. And what has the change? Earlier, P2P was the biggest one. Now, P2M has overtaken P2P. Now, when you are trying to overtake P2M, which means that could have happened when all the players, which is including the aggregators or the TPAPs, they have really contributed to the innovation of making it frictionless, making it available all the time, and thus once we have reached that building block of 1 billion, and now we are trying to go further, segmentation and differentiation will become very important. And at that point of time, it is important that there is a certain pricing metric which is built in, or a certain reward which is built in for fueling that innovation. While certain elements of the society will benefit from that, but if we have to still go down to the grassroots and through innovative products, whether it is person to government or whether it is person to business, I think at that point of time, that differentiation can be maybe priced, and our advice would also be that let's look at that differently. But maybe over to you, Amit. You also are part of the same fraternity.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Sudhir. And it's a wonderful session going on. And regarding finding a sustainable revenue channel for the payment players around, yeah, it's a difficult job around. But yeah, definitely, we may need to look at the opportunity in a different way. Like, the opportunity which is growing, and that is the rising complexity. If you talk about the scale, the country there are 80 million businesses, online businesses, live in this country, and out of 80 billion, which is consisting 40% of the all businesses in India. So, and that is growing at 20% growth rate. So, thing is that this opportunity, like all these businesses which is coming online, they are getting their business model complexer. So, actually, the opportunity which is growing is to offer them strong financial services. And in parallel, like Gautam mentioned, that the fundamental digital roadways are getting created. That is creating that formalization of the services. The formalization of businesses are happening in parallel. So formalization of businesses, growth of businesses, everything boils down to one problem, that is the strong need of the financial services, where we can fit in very well. So the idea is to incorporate innovation in your products, in a way we can handle lot of worries of these businesses, the complexity of the businesses in one platform, where payment is the critical piece. Any businesses have to have it, right? So what if we kind of offer and we kind of solve their business problem, by building workflows around it? What if we are solving that problem by offering securitized product, like insurance product on top of the payments layer, right? So those are the some innovation which is kind of happening around. There are credits which is being offered on top of the payments rail. So that is also building some of the revenue channel for the players like us. And I see that's the ideology which we at Easebuzz kind of incorporated since beginning. Where the larger pool is yet to adopt that. So that's why we have remained profitable since inception. So that's the value-added services with innovations around, building omni-channel payment solutions, consisting both online, offline together, and solving businesses for the, solving problems for the businesses in one package. So that's my take on the opportunities.
Just turning to Karthik, I think, the digital payment story has been fantastic. I think the one thing that keeps a lot of people up at night, including our regulator, is security of payments. Because I think, adoption is one thing, but we are a society that has moved from, cash-based economy to digital. So various COVID, etc., spurred that journey. But it takes, one fraud or one leak of payments data to, crumble all of that. So I know as Mindgate, you'll process, billions of transactions at the back end. So just a few words on how this important responsibility of ensuring security of data and avoiding cases of frauds or even unavailability of service, how your organization and generally the industry should tackle that issue.
Thanks, Gautam. Good afternoon, everyone. So before I kind of try to answer your question, so maybe just to add a point to what Sudhir did mention. So he was talking about 1 billion transactions. So in fact, today NPCI has clocked 10 billion transactions in a month, aiming towards 1 billion per day, right? So we are trying to kind of look at 3x that growth, which we all look forward to. On the question especially, see, this is a very loaded topic for discussion today, right? So we have 3 large areas of focus around the topic that we have today. One is about innovation, one is about financial inclusion, and we are talking about payments as a service. So each of them are an ocean in their own. When we are talking about enabling end consumers and getting to the depth of financial inclusion, the problem statement today in the industry is when you talk about financial inclusion, we are talking about both the consumer side of inclusion as well as on the business side. So the business side is where Sudhir and Amit refer to, right? So we also have a large amount of consumers on one side. The second is financial inclusion can be both at the urban level as well as at the rural level. When you have to try to tackle a problem of this varied nature, right? So we typically look at what are the kind of challenges that today consumers face, be it business or end consumers. One is about trust. Obviously, how many of them really trust the payments that they are able to make, the methods that they are using to make the payment, the kind of experience that they go through. It has to be frictionless, obviously, and they will have to have higher success rates, and they need to kind of ensure that they're able to gain trust by transacting more on the platform. There are a lot of enablers to kind of helping the customers reach there. One is obviously making sure that every transaction of you that you process goes through successfully. So therefore, there is a high scalability, resiliency of the platforms, and the throughput that you will see, because today we are talking about growing almost 2x every year just for UPI, right? So all of that is critical and important to ensure that the customer gets that trust. The second is, in fact, in terms of the online resolution of disputes that NPCI introduced, right? So where customers are enabled with the option to be able to kind of look at the status of their transactions, kind of raise online disputes, and probably be able to resolve their disputes quite faster. So these are some of the enablers that come as part of the journey to kind of ensure that customers have a trust, customers get a lot of comfort around it. And more importantly, the solutions that we bring in, we are trying to kind of make it more frictionless and also be able to kind of make it so very easy to adopt, right? So every transaction journey is quite complex. There are multiple entities involved. There will be different reasons why a transaction could not go through, or why a customer could believe potentially that could be a fraudulent transaction. So at each stage, we try to make the journey simpler for the customer. So some of these use cases that we are introducing and which are getting launched as part of this GFF are quite simpler. I mean, very similar to what a traditional bank today offers, right? So it could be a credit product, it could be kind of EMIs that are enabled for customers for transactions. So, but then the way the journey of being able to implement this is what will kind of bring in this confidence. And the technology layer, obviously, we are talking about enabling it on cloud. There are data regulations and RBI guidelines coming around in terms of data localization that needs to be there, the stringent guidelines that are coming about in terms of outsourcing of technology. So these are all well governed and documented, and I think there is a process of discovery at each stage where we are all kind of working towards facilitating that the infrastructure that we provide and the processing platforms that we provide are robust and scalable. And I think that's a journey. It's still a long way to go, but I think we are on the right track.
Thanks, Karthik. That's very comprehensive. I think now just turning to the topic, financial inclusion, while the focus is always on the retail customer playing, ultimately financial inclusion means many different things. So I think some of the panelists touched upon it, but we also in India still have various merchants, especially in the SME or below segment, which still function as an informal economy. They receive cash predominantly, they write their transactions in a physical book and so on. And I think there's a huge role that the payment processors are already playing. And Sudhir, I don't know if you have to add in terms of what are the types of things you're doing. So I know people are doing khata, enablement of a sort of central platform to pay vendors, and just basically digitizing business data which was so far not digitized, which also then brings up the opportunity of doing, building credit on top of that in the form of cash flow lending and so on. So I don't know if you want to shed some light on that trend.
Thanks, Gautam. See, the value chain is pretty big, and the idea is to pick up portions of the value chain and start working on it and start digitizing it or adding intelligence to it. So for example, if lending is happening, right, and if you're talking about a Kirana store, typically lending depends upon a repayment history. It is intent and ability. But how do we figure out, now that all the transactions are digital and we know there is a certain amount of income which is coming in, and Kirana stores may or may not be filing GST returns, right? How do we bring lending across to that? That is one part of the element, to bring them or to make sure that the business gets fueled. The other part is the ERP. How do we make sure that they are able to talk to their distributors digitally and take it forward? The other side is, if their sales are not happening to the level which they want and they're trying to go online, and let's say there are too many amount of dropouts, how do we improve the UI UX at that point of time in their payment journey, which then helps to go forward? So to that entire extent, I think PAs are playing a very big role, not only to digitize the upstream value chain, but also the downstream value chain, and not limiting itself just to accept cash or accept digitally. More we go up, I think sooner all these SMEs will start getting larger part of the ecosystem rather than being at the fringe of the ecosystem.
Amit, I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah. So with, when we talk about these businesses, and helping them to, not just sustain and with the growth. So basically, we may need to look at the problem, maybe beyond a little bit of payments, because, the typical problem they kind of face is the affordability with the, with the IT or the technical hand and the awareness around. So basically, we may need to look at it as how we can help them with what they are expecting from just a payments flow. So basically, if we look at education as in space, they have a huge problem with the revenue, revenue collection, reconciliation, and the refund cycle, and and every time it's months and months of hassle which they go through. what if, being a payment player and we build, product around it and offer it on the same platform, same solution. So it's about, how we can, help them to handle all of their pre-admission process, all of their post-admission process. They kind of have, some complex arrangement around there. Like there are many universities who want to, charge on particular EMI installment, penalty charges are totally different. So basically in that cases, BPS and such democratized, solutions are not helping that much. So, there are segments like B2B payments is another, space where there are lot of, innovation is required. Where, we as a payment player getting inside it, understanding their problem around the high ticket volumes, problem around debit note, credit note maintenance. There are a lot of, workflows which is required to coordinate between different teams, delivery team, data warehouse team, and orchestrate things in such an efficient manner so that they can save some money, and they don't mind paying you. So that's where that's what our Indian demography requires, and it's about how we can get inside their ecosystem, like via maybe with the platforms they might be using some ERPs. How we can give them plug and play solutions which can directly work with their ERP and solve their all problems. So these are some areas where we should really focus on innovate. Every innovator, creator, in this room, can look at their revenue model, bring the domain-driven design while they are architecting their product, and that may give them a vision that there are certain certain features which can really solve their end customers' problem. So yeah, so these are ways which we have incorporated and tried to come out with the products. Thanks.
Thanks, Amit. I think just to pick up on what you said, Karthik, I think one of the key things has also been a drive to kind of make payments as frictionless as possible. And obviously across the world you see, let's forget financial inclusion for a minute and focus on innovation. I think one of the things that has happened, and the regulator has taken a view that small value transactions we can do with less authentication, but there's always this balance about protecting against the fraud risk, and therefore you have our famous two-factor authentication, and trying to make payments seamless and give a superb customer UI UX. So just wanted to get a sense in terms of what you think are the next future trends in the Indian ecosystem for innovative ways to do authentication. Is wearables the next thing where you will see payments authenticated through wearable payment devices? I know biometric people are developing solutions without storing the biometric, and you can kind of so just a sense from your end in terms of, especially for UPI, what we can expect to see to improve UI UX.
Okay, so there are a lot of innovations anyway happening around UPI. So over the next 2-3 days, we will keep hearing about a lot of new product launches. We are part of many of them. Some of those that we have been seeing are in extension to the low-value payments that you spoke about, right? So today, we all know that about 60% of the UPI transactions are low-value transactions. And last year, NPCI launched the UPI Lite functionality, which is an on-device wallet, and you can do a kind of a wallet-based payments for all these low-value transactions without a PIN, right? So this was capped at 200 rupees per transactions. Now today, that limit has got extended to 500 rupees. There are multiple reasons. Obviously, one is to see increased adoption, because there is a larger pool of transactions that are getting covered as part of this UPI Lite journey. And it kind of helps the banks and the ecosystem also to be able to kind of leverage a lot of payments in this mode rather than clogging the bank's infrastructure. The natural extension to that, which we have been expecting and which is getting launched, is the UPI Lite offline, where this is a payment that can be enabled by for the customers, in a completely networkless zone, right? So it works very similarly to the tap and pay NFC option. This is nothing new to payments or to the consumer journeys, because we had this tap and pay concept in the card world for several years now. Only that it has been an online transaction for most part of the journey. We are talking about the truly offline kind of a payment here. Now, here in this case, this is one of the innovations that are happening to help to get towards the grassroots level where there are limited network coverages and things like that. And the second aspect is we are talking about another use case, which is something called as conversational payments, which is again one of the other launches. So customers don't need to go through the hassle of getting through an app, going through the payment journey across multiple steps, and kind of conclude a payment. So just at the voice command of a customer, so probably the transaction is initiated, and it becomes more frictionless and seamless for the customers. Yes, of course, there is a level of authentication at each stage where the customer has to necessarily enter a PIN in this case, but the journey towards enabling these same transactions to the customer through a different medium becomes more interesting for the customer. Even at the merchant level, today we are seeing a lot of adoption on the single-click, quick checkout kind of an experience, right? So today we're working with banks to implement that as well. So at the merchant app, so you can kind of link your bank's UPI ID, and then probably you can do a single-click checkout. So this is all the kind of natural extensions to for the same use case, but then kind of presented differently to the consumers. So these are innovations around the same use case that we kind of keep implementing for the banks.
There's something maybe I need to ask the audience. How many of you have tried UPI 2.0 recurring payments, which is there under UPI 2.0, which is, let's say, Netflix or Prime? If you look at that and what Karthik was trying to mention, there is frictionless payment, which is the core objective, but also to make sure that the customer is in the middle and is in charge of that payment. Right. Now, if you look at the recurring side from a form factor, which is either through credit card versus to UPI, UPI gives that power to the customer to not only pause the subscription, but also to stop the subscription. Whereas, and that is so, the process of paying is also seamless, and the person of stopping it or pausing it is also very seamless, which means the customer is in the middle. Now, when you take it to the next level, which is mentioning about the innovations which are coming in, which is conversational commerce, I think it is going to completely bring both the customer as well as the smaller medium merchants also together, because that will bring customer closer as well as help us help to even pay faster and make it even more smoother.
Just Andrew, just to turn to you for a second. All of this conversational payments, AI-based apps that will talk to you and so on, all sounds like very data-heavy apps. So do you think there is a play, as India innovates, will that fuel the need for your technology further?
Yeah, because we are server-side, we're very light on the channel, so it puts no burden on the low-end phones. So we're a little bit agnostic. We don't care how heavy the function is because it all takes place on the server side. What I would say from our experience in East Africa doing literacy apps is there's a catch-22 where people who don't generally use apps because they've got low-end phones, and when you go into the home screen, it looks like they've got native apps, but they've actually got aliases that go to web views, which tend to be quite heavy on the channel. But so when you've got people who are not familiar with apps, when you design your app, you've got to put much more attention into making them very simple and having more screens and making sure they make less decisions on each page or screen so that they can learn how to do it. Because we think it's intuition, but we've actually learnt how to use apps as they've got more and more complicated. And that's the catch-22 where we think we come into play, because it doesn't matter how big the app is, we can put it on the server and take that load off the phone. And as I said, the catch-22 is if you're unfamiliar with apps, and particularly sophisticated apps, you do need more screens and less clutter on the screen to learn. The saying is, don't make me think. Make it as easy as possible for me to just look at it, and it's one or two decisions. And so, yeah, I think we've got a good place. And as I said, we came here to do reconnaissance, so I'm glad you've got me here, because I'm actually learning a lot from these gentlemen as we go along. But yeah, I've been greatly encouraged here by the difference we could make to the ecosystem.
Thank you. I think the organizers are telling us that our Oscar music is playing and we need to get off. But I'll ask them to indulge us and take a few questions for the panelists from the audience.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to paucity of time, we'll take two questions for the session. We have one here. Somebody else would raise your hand, please.
Yeah, hi, Andrew. My question to you. So what I understood is, see, many of our partners, merchant partners, when we reach out to them on their app, payment-related upgrades, features, SDKs. So one of the common refrains are that, it'll make the app very heavy, and that's where the development, or at least on the payment side, gets stuck. So if I understand correctly, your solutions come handy there in terms of loading the features on the server, or is it that maybe the use case is something else?
Yeah, no, yes, no, that's a strange answer. Yes, you're correct. What we do is it's a server-side technology. The app sits on the server, streams to an app player, which we might update periodically if we've forgotten something, but we can make changes to the app in real time. By real time, I don't mean you've got to close the app and start it. We can change it in real time. So it's very forgiving as a technology because you can do A/B testing between two different groups. And that's complicated to do, but as somebody said earlier, you keep the complication on the business side and not on the consumer side. They don't need to see any of that complication.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, due to paucity of time, we would have to end this session right here. My apologies to everybody who has questions, but I guess a lot of you will have the opportunities to interact with our speakers offline and interact and, of course, ask all your questions. Right now, of course, what I do request you to do is give them a big, big round of applause, please. Thank you so very much to our esteemed panelists.